Oh, Mrs. Garcia, you're a school counselor and new homeowner and grad student. You're an Ander. National University supports the whole you, so you can focus on what matters most. Learn more at nu.edu.
America's two great pastimes collide on this podcast. It is baseball and making money. From the dog days of summer through the October Classic, Greg Bases Peterson's going to be free swinging at the betting board as he tries to hit a grand slam for your bankroll. Now here is GP.
It is a wonderful Thursday, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to MLB Overtime Betting. Greg Peterson broadcasting from the Azuñia Tequila Studios out here in beautiful Las Vegas. Another spectacular show today as Scott Hastings of OddsShark is going to be joining me in the second segment. We're going to be breaking down today's card. We're going to take a look at what he's seen in the first, I would say, month or so of the MLB season. And then in the final segment, though we've got a smaller card and though we've got games off the board, I will give you a side and total on every game that is going to be played today and a little something I like to call touch 'em all. We did not get any Twitter questions today. If you ever have one, feel free to tweet it in at Juden_81. So let's look at some bettable trends that we found from yesterday.
So what teams and players is Greg looking to back? He will lay it on you in the call-up.
Ironically enough, the Tampa Bay Rays played yet another over yesterday as they wound up losing to the Kansas City Royals by a count of 10-2. The over is now 6-2 in the Tampa Bay Rays' last 8 games, and taking the loss in this one was Blake Snell. You figured that him coming off the injured list, he would be on a limited pitch count, and that was the case. And he didn't really look like himself. 65 pitches, he wound up giving up 3 runs, 2 of which were earned in 3.1 innings. He gave out 2 free passes. And then Ryan Yarbrough from there provided a lot of relief, but I don't know if I would call it relief because in 4.1 innings, gave up 7 runs, all of which were earned, and the Kansas City Royals, they had themselves a field day as Jacob Junis gave them a quality start, went 5 innings, gave up 1 run. Very good sign for the Royals, who were a greater than $2 underdog in this one, and they got some homers. Whit Merrifield goes deep for his 4th home run of the year, and Adalberto Mondesi provided his 3rd of the campaign as the Kansas City Royals we're getting it from a little bit of everyone. Aside from Chris Owings and Ryan O'Hearn, everyone in the lineup had a hit, and actually 6 of the 9 players in the lineup had at least 2 hits as they pounded out 14. And then for the Tampa Bay Rays, the only bright spot was the fact that Yandy Diaz was able to have an RBI in this one, so that was a little bit of a nice sign. But all in all, a very big game for the Kansas City Royals and just a little bit of a step back for the Rays. You want to be monitoring Blake Snell as he was dealing with that injury moving forward. The Cleveland Indians were able to get a nice win over the Miami Marlins by a count of 6-2. In this one, the Marlins had Sandy Alcantara on the mound, and he wasn't bad in this one. He wound up pitching 5 innings. He got his pitch count up a little bit higher than you'd like. He gave up 2 runs, but only 1 of which were earned. So once again, decent outing there. He's a guy that for the Miami Marlins, you could trust if he's getting a very, very big price. And Martin Prado hit his first home run of the year for the Miami Marlins. But for the Cleveland Indians, they were able to play a little bit of deep ball themselves. Jose Ramirez really got out of his slump. 3 of 4 on this game, including a home run and 4 RBI. That was his 2nd home run of the year. Still hitting below 200, but you got to think that he's picking it up with Francisco Lindor back in the lineup. They now have Carlos Gonzalez and Jason Kipnis as well. And Jeffrey Rodriguez, a guy that we didn't know what we were going to get out of him in his 2nd start of the season, looked terrific. 7 innings pitched. Gave up 1 run, only 3 strikeouts. But what I'm noticing in baseball is these guys that don't get a lot of strikeouts, they're able to go deeper in games. So it actually might be a little bit better to look at a guy that is only getting like 6, 7 strikeouts per 9 innings, because even though they're not getting all those Ks, they're doing a very good job of just being able to keep themselves in the game. And what that means is the bullpen does not come in and gas can it. And speaking of torpedoed, how about the St. Louis Cardinals versus Milwaukee Brewers game? The Brewers completely took this one away in the 4th inning as Ulysses Chacin was on the mound. Went 4 innings, gave up 4 runs, all of which were in the 4th inning, as supplying the power for the St. Louis Cardinals in that inning was Marcell Ozuna with his 9th home run of the year and Yadier Molina for his 2nd. That was really all the offense in this game, as Adam Wainwright delivered a great start for the St. Louis Cardinals. Went 6 innings, gave up 1 run. That run was in the 1st inning, and Eric Thames wound up hitting a home run for the Milwaukee Brewers. That was his 5th on the campaign. And past that, the Brewers really wasn't able to generate much. I will say that after that bad inning, the bullpen did look pretty good for the Brewers. Jeremy Jeffrey still has not given up a run for this team this year, but the fourth inning really put them behind the 8 ball. And now the Brewers, I believe, have now lost 4 straight games. So things not necessarily going great for this team. St. Louis seems to be heating up a little bit. And the Colorado Rockies right now might be the hottest team out there in the big leagues. They wound up pounding the Washington Nationals by a count of 9-5. It was a little bit of a tough start for German Marquez. He gave up 3 runs in the first 2 innings, but in the final 4 that he was in the game, did not give up a single run, went 7 innings, gave up 3 runs, 7 strikeouts, won 102 pitches, and then from there, the bullpen was pretty decent. Hunter Musgrave wound up giving up 2 runs, not necessarily the best sign there, but the game was relatively in hand. Charlie Blackmon wound up going deep for his 3rd home run of the year, as the Rockies played quite a bit of small ball, as they had 12 hits in this game, and they also drew 6 walks. And if you're a fan of the Washington Nationals, and if you're betting on them, you have to try to avoid Trevor Rosenthal. He winds up giving up 3 runs in an inning of relief in this one. That actually lowered his ERA from 40.5 to 36. This is a reliever that you want absolutely no part of. If you have the under, or if you have the Washington Nationals and he comes into the game, you might as well consider your bet lost. And as much as you think I'm joking, I'm actually not. Juan Soto hit a home run in this game, his 4th of the campaign, and for the Washington Nationals, Anibal Sanchez just was not good in this game. Pitches 5 innings, gives up 6 runs, all of which were earned, had 5 walks, just not getting the job done. The Washington Nationals, their pitching, just not very good. The A's pitching has not necessarily been lights out either, but they were able to get a 6-5 win over the Texas Rangers. Making the start for the Texas Rangers was Kyle Dowdy, and they're going to have another unknown on the mound tomorrow, which I'm going to be going into in Touch 'em All. But Adrian Sampson, the gentleman that was supposed to start for this team today, wound up pitching 3 innings of relief in this one because Dowdy wound up giving up 3 runs in 3 innings. This was because Drew Smyly was on the injured list. The Texas Rangers' whole rotation at this point is very interesting. They were able to get some power in this one, though. Logan Forsythe, his 2nd home run of the year, and Noah Mazzara went deep for his 3rd and 4th dingers of the year. But the problem was the Oakland A's were able to mount a rally, and they had some power of their own. Matt Chapman had his 8th home run of the year. Marcus Semien goes deep for his 4th. And then Stephen Piscotty, with 2 outs, was able to get a single with the game tied up 5-5. And then from there, providing the winning single was Chad Pinder, who's been playing very well for this team. He wound up getting 2 hits in this one. He's upped his average to 320. But for the Oakland A's, Aaron Brooks, once again, a sort of start. 5 innings, gives up 3 runs. And then from there, Yasmero Petit and Joaquim Soria gave up a run on the bullpen. But JP Wendelkirk and Blake Trine, once again, flames for this team in relief as well. Speaking of teams that got some good pitching, the San Diego Padres, they were able to limit the Seattle Mariners to just 2 hits as they win this game by a count of 1-0. What I will say is that Felix Hernandez looks like he's back to his old self. In 7 innings pitch, he gives up 1 run. That lone run was an Ian Kinsler home run, which really was able to get him going. For Ian Kinsler, that was his 2nd of the year. He is still hitting only a $155, but a very encouraging sign there. But he took the loss despite going 7 strong and getting 8 strikeouts and giving up just that 1 run. And then for the San Diego Padres, Chris Paddock. He is a guy that you have to be betting on at this point. He is a star in the making. 7 innings pitch, gives up 1 run, 9 strikeouts. He was absolutely terrific. And then I mentioned this on the podcast yesterday. Trey Wingenter and Kirby Yates are a good 8th and 9th inning combo, and I would argue that Yates is the best closer out there in baseball. He now has 12 saves so far this year. The San Diego Padres, despite getting only 4 hits, were able to get the job done with just that 1 run. The San Diego Padres really ascending at this point. And how about the San Francisco Giants? Their pitching once again got the job done, and they were able to get some offense in their game against the Toronto Blue Jays. They win by a count of 4-0. Drew Pomeranz looked terrific. 6 innings pitch, gives up 2 hits, and those were the only 2 hits that the Toronto Blue Jays were able to muster. We're going to be talking about this with Scott Hastings in the next segment, but this is a very feast or famine offense with the Toronto Blue Jays. Clay Buchholz had a little bit of a rough outing. 5 innings pitched, gave up 4 runs, all of which were earned. But you have to like what you saw the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen. From there, 4 scoreless innings. And for the San Francisco Giants, the big hit actually came from Pablo Sandoval, his 2nd home run of the year. He's been used in a DH spot, and he was the only player in the lineup that got in at bat that was hitting above 230 for this team, which I think is very glaring in regards to the San Francisco Giants. Got to continue to take unders with this team because they've got great pitching and not so much great hitting. Speaking of teams that were actually able to get some very good pitching, how about the Atlanta Braves? They wind up holding down the Cincinnati Reds to 1 run, who I believe are still hitting below 200 as a team. You got to be taking unders with the Reds as well, as the Braves get this win by a count of 3-1. Mike Soroka in his second start of the year looked pretty good. 5.2 innings, gives up 1 run. The 3 walks are a little bit of a concern. He jacked up his pitch count to 109, but the Atlanta Braves bullpen actually had a very good outing in this one. They go 3.1 innings. They don't give up any runs. Dan Winkler out of the bullpen actually looks pretty decent for this team. AJ Minter, he's a little bit of a box of chocolates. You don't know what you're going to be able to get out of him from game to game, but Josh Tomlin, in his newly adopted role in the bullpen for the Atlanta Braves, was able to get a little bit of a hold. He was able to get out of a jam, and Luke Jackson also has been doing a good job out of the pen for the Atlanta Braves as well, and providing the power for the Braves in this one. Ozzie Albies, he was able to get a home run in the first inning, his third of the campaign, and Josh Donaldson also had a nice RBI in this game as well. Meanwhile, for the Cincinnati Reds, their lone run was off a RBI from Jesse Winkler, as Tanner Roark actually looked decent in this game. He went 5 innings. He did get his pitch count up a little bit farther than you'd like, but of the 2 runs that he gave up, only 1 were earned, and the Cincinnati Reds still doing a good job in the bullpen. 4 innings pitched, 1 run, nothing to really complain about there. If you're a Mets fan, you have to complain about the offense, though. They did not generate a single run against the Philadelphia Phillies as they get the job done by a count of 6-0. Jason Vargas takes a loss, but he actually did not pitch bad in this one. Got his pitch count up a little bit high, but in 4.2 innings, winds up giving up just 1 run. That was a double by Bryce Harper, and then from there, it was the Mets bullpen that really let them down. In the 8th inning, Robbie Gesellman gives up 3 runs, and then in the 9th inning, to just pour some lighter fluid on it, Jacob Arami gives up 2 runs himself. Oh boy, I mean, this is a Mets bullpen that you want absolutely no part of, and the Mets wound up leaving 9 men on base and going 0 for 6 with runners in scoring position. And with the Philadelphia Phillies, they were able to get a very good performance from Rhys Hoskins. He had his first triple of the year. He wound up having a home run. Big day for him, as the Philadelphia Phillies were just playing a bunch of small ball in the latter innings. And Vince Velasquez looks like a very undervalued pitcher as well. Only went 5 innings, but he did not give up a single run, gave up 3 hits. ERA now 1.99. He gets his first decision of the year. And there actually are some trustworthy arms out there in the Phillies bullpen. Juan Niasco, not necessarily one of them, but he had a scoreless inning. Sir Anthony Dominguez and Pat Neshek have been doing a great job in middle relief as well. You have to like the way that they pitched in this one, and you got to like the way that the Diamondbacks are trending as well. They get their 3rd straight win over the Pittsburgh Pirates. 11-2 was the final, as they just completely torched Jordan Lyles, who came in with an ERA below 0.6. He winds up giving up 5 runs, 4 of which were earned in 5 innings pitched. His ERA now a 2.05. And then from there, Nick Kingham and Sean Brault give up 3 runs apiece, as each of them went 2 innings. The good news is they were able to get a home run out of Josh Bell, his 5th of the year, and Jung-Ho Kang, his 4th. But for the Arizona Diamondbacks, everyone was on their game in this one. 6 different players had at least 2 hits for them. Noah Ahmad had his 2nd home run of the year. Ketel Marte, who had been struggling a little bit, goes deep twice for his 5th and 6th dingers of the year. He had 4 RBI in this one. David Peralta, he hasn't necessarily been hitting the deep ball this year, but he's been hitting for average. He had 2 RBI. And Merrill Kelly, a very good outing. 7 innings pitched. He only had 2 free passes. The 2 runs that he gave up were those 2 home runs, but only 2 earned runs surrendered in this one. And then a guy that's been pitching in long relief for the Arizona Diamondbacks and was a little bit of a starter for this team last year is Matt Cook. He wound up providing 2 scoreless innings of relief as well. He's a little bit of an interesting guy, as his ERA is right now a 9, but you got to think that he's going to be able to find it. Seems like he's adapting to his new role well. The Baltimore Orioles wind up getting back-to-back wins. They knock off the Chicago White Sox by a count of 4-3. I will continue to say, the White Sox bullpen is looking better. In 3.1 innings of relief, they did not give up a single run. Problem is, Irvin Santana is a garbage starter and a guy that you need to fade until further notice. In 4.2 innings, he winds up giving up 4 runs, all of which were earned, including a home run. The home run in this one came from Stevie Wilkerson. That was his first of the season. And Jonathan Means actually looks like a decent pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles. He goes 5 innings. He now has a record of 3-2, 6 strikeouts, only 1 earned run. The bullpen of the Baltimore Orioles very nearly choked this one away, as the Chicago White Sox just were unable to hit with men in scoring position. They leave 11 men on base. They went 2 of 10 with men in scoring position. They were threatening throughout late in the game, but they just were unable to scratch anything across. A lot of that has to do with the fact that their outfield in general just is not hitting very well. Adam Engel, Nick Delmonico, and Daniel Polka all hitting below 150 for this team. So that is something that you really do need to note with the Chicago White Sox. But bullpen is looking a little bit better. The Tigers bullpen really blew you the under if you had it in the Boston Red Sox versus Detroit Tigers game. The Boston Red Sox win this one by a count of 11-4. Tyson Ross did not have his best start. 5 innings pitched, gives up 4 runs, all of which were earned. He had 3 walks. And then from there, it was really just a mismatch of guys that were just unable to get the ball over the plate. Jose Manuel Fernandez currently has an ERA of 67.50. In his first relief appearance of the year, he gives up 5 runs in 2/10 of an inning. Drew Verhagen wasn't much better in 1/10 of an inning. 3 walks, and he gave up 2 runs as the Detroit Tigers as a whole give up 10 walks in this game as the Boston Red Sox hung a 7th spot in the 8th inning of what looked to be a surefire under. In this one, the Boston Red Sox didn't even hit a home run. They were just able to continue to play small ball. They were able to just drive them around. As for the Boston Red Sox, 8 of the 9 starters in the lineup all had an RBI. And if you're looking for something very encouraging for the Red Sox, Eduardo Rodriguez, with by far his best start of the year, he did give up 3 walks in 6 innings, but only 1 earned run. But Tyler Thornburg is a thorn in the side of the Boston Red Sox. He gives up 3 runs in his inning of relief. He's a Boston Red Sox reliever that you want to fade. But Matt Barnes and Brandon Workman actually looked good in this one. Both wound up striking out the side in their innings. So a little bit of an encouraging sign for the Boston Red Sox after they got swept in that doubleheader. The Chicago Cubs had their offense come alive with a big 6-run 6th inning that powered them to a 7-6 win over the LA Dodgers. For the Dodgers, Scott Alexander, a guy that you cannot trust. In 1/10 of an inning, he winds up giving up 3 runs, all of which were earned. Walker Buehler was not able to get out of that 6th inning. He wound up leaving the game with 3 earned runs in 5.2 innings. He doesn't look like himself. You got to be fading him. His ERA is now at 5.25, though it was Scott Alexander that wound up taking the loss in this one. If there is an encouraging sign for the Dodgers bullpen, though, it is that Yimi Garcia was able to dip his ERA to a 6.17, and they also were able to get some power out of Cody Bellinger, his 12th home run of the year. And then Alex Verdugo was able to come up in a pinch hitting spot and hit a dinger of his own. That was his 4th of the campaign, and that came when they were down by quite a few, and he was able to cut the lead there. But for the Chicago Cubs, they got another home run out of Jason Hayward. He has been hitting really well for this team. That is his 5th of the campaign. He is hitting .333, so that is of note. And then Javi Baez wound up taking Alexander deep for his 8th dinger of the year. He also had 3 RBI in this one. Cole Hamels got a bit roughed up in 5.1 innings, gave up 3 runs, 6 walks. That is the big concern there. And Steve Cishek of the bullpen for the Chicago Cubs, which has been much better as of late, winds up giving up 3 runs. But Pedro Strop looks like he's his old self. Brandon Kinsler doing a good job out of the bullpen, and Brad Brock wound up getting the win for the Chicago Cubs. So all in all, the Cubs bullpen looking a little bit better. The Houston Astros bats were able to come alive, and they get a 7-1 win over the Minnesota Twins. Justin Verlander is one of the few aces out there that I feel like at this point you can trust. He winds up improving his record to 4-1 as he goes 8 strong innings, gives up just 1 run, 8 strikeouts, did not walk a single batter, and that lone run that he gave up was a solo home run to Jorge Polanco, his 5th of the year. That came in the 4th inning, but Cole Stewart, in his first start of the season for the Minnesota Twins, did not necessarily give the best of outings as he went 6 innings pitched. He gave up 5 runs, all of which were earned, 3 walks. He actually gave them a little bit more length than you'd expect, and then from there, Fernando Romo wound up giving up 2 runs in 2 innings himself, so they were at least able to save the bullpen in a game that they sort of knew was lost because they were only able to generate 4 hits. But for the Houston Astros, they were playing a little bit of home run derby in this one. Michael Brantley, his 5th of the year. Josh Reddick, his 3rd home run of the year. And Carlos Correa got the offense really started with his 5th dinger of the campaign as the Houston Astros as a team were able to get 10 hits. And the last game on the slate from yesterday was the New York Yankees being able to take down the LA Angels by a count of 6-5. They got down 5-0 in this game, but then they were just able to pound out the runs late. The New York Yankees just continue to impress, as some of you guys may have had your bet voided in this one, as Cam Bedrosian wound up being the starter for this game, as he was essentially the opener for Felix Pena. Pena actually wound up having a very good outing. He pitched 5 innings, gave up 1 run, and Bedrosian only went 1 inning, but he did not give up any runs. As for the New York Yankees, they actually did not get a good start out of CC Sabathia, as the Angels were able to take that early lead, and it was because of CC Sabathia. In 5 innings, winds up giving up 5 runs, 4 of which were earned. Did not walk anyone, but he gave up a trio of home runs to an Angels team that has been struggling. Cole Calhoun hit a home run for his 5th, and then Andrelton Simmons went deep for his 2nd and 3rd dingers of the campaign, but the man that really blew it for the LA Angels was Luis Garcia, who coming into this game had been terrific out of the bullpen with a 0.87 ERA. He gives up 3 runs, does not record a single out, and that was the difference in the game, as the New York Yankees, despite the fact that they've got so many guys on the injured list, are able to get the job done, and it was thanks to DJ LeMahieu, who had 3 RBI. Yankees did not get a single home run in this game, but they were able to get timely hitting as they made the most of their 7 hits to be able to get the job done, as they also drew 4 walks as well. So those are the trends that you're noticing in baseball. The Yankees continue to catch despite the fact that they are so badly banged up. The Rays are actually playing some overs. The Cleveland Indians are all about the unders. The Padres are getting great pitching along with the San Francisco Giants. Just in general, the West Coast, aside from, I guess you could say, the Diamondbacks and the Colorado Rockies, are getting some good pitching. The bullpen of the White Sox looks good, and you just can't trust the bullpen of the Mets at this point. So those were my big takeaways from Wednesday, and now we got to turn the page forward to Thursday, and no better man to do that than Scott Hastings of OddsShark, who will join me next right here on MLB Overtime Betting.
Greg is going to the bullpen as he makes a call to the Azuña hotline.
And welcome back to MLB Overtime Betting. Greg Peterson broadcasting from the Azuña Tequila Studios out here in beautiful Las Vegas. We've got our first returning victim here on this fine podcast, as Scott Hastings, a gentleman that does great work with OddsShark. He does a little bit of everything, but this time of year, he really does quite a bit in the baseball sector. You can follow him on Twitter at ScottyH_OS is my guest. And Scott, how are you doing today?
I'm great, and I'm glad to be back as another victim, as you say, and always a good chance to chat with you, Greg.
Always great to have you on. And something else that's been great right now has been the Chicago Cubs. After getting off to a really rough 1-6 start, they've really been able to right the ship, and it looks like John Lester is healthy off the injured list and is going to be pitching for the team tomorrow against the LA Dodgers, who will have out their Ross Stripling. What do you make of this game? Because I think it's quite intriguing with the way that the Cubs have really been ascending. And then with the LA Dodgers, we know that their bullpen is not very good, and they've been a streaky team because they lost 6 straight at one point this year, and then they had a big winning streak going into this series with the Cubs.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head for both teams. Like you say, Chicago seems to be hitting their stride. Dodgers hit and miss. It's hard to really figure out what LA is. Like you said, they got out of the gate strong, then they floundered, and now they're back on the winning ways. John Lester is making his turn off the 10-day IL. He had that hamstring injury. He was good before he went on the injury list, so it'll be interesting how he comes back. Of course, we've seen various athletes from different major leagues deal with hamstring injuries, and they don't go away that quickly. So I'm a little surprised that Lester's back in the lineup. He only missed probably 1, maybe 2 starts there. So I'm really interested to see how he performs. As I mentioned, he did quite well in his previous 3 outings. Of course, his most recent one, he only lasted a couple innings before getting yanked with that hamstring injury. It's really going to be interesting. He did give up 3 home runs, though, over his 12 innings, and the Dodgers have been crushing the long ball. So very, very interesting matchup. And Stripling, he's been mostly a relief pitcher throughout his career. And in the rotation, he's been darn right pretty good. He's had a couple quality starts. And what's interesting about the quality starts was in both of those, he only had 3 Ks. Well, his other 3 outings, he had 5 or more and sort of got roughed up a little bit. So fewer Ks, and he seems to pitch well. Quite interesting.
And is it just me, or does it feel like this year the guys that have been getting a lot of strikeouts haven't necessarily been the most effective? Because what I noticed is that these guys that get a high amount of strikeouts, we saw it with Chris Sale a couple days ago against the Detroit Tigers. We've seen it with Chris Archer throughout his career. These guys that get a lot of Ks, they actually seem to burn themselves out a little bit too early in starts. It doesn't allow them to go into the 6th, 7th, 8th inning. And sometimes that can be a little bit of a subtraction by addition, I guess you could say.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You get into some higher pitch counts because you can get in that full count, just trying to get that strikeout, seek that strikeout. And then I look back at the late, great Roy Halladay, and he was a pitch-to-contact pitcher. So he wouldn't have those. He would have the occasional 10-plus strikeout game, but, the 4 to 6 strikeouts, but he would get those ground balls in key situations and get out of the inning, and you would see him rack up 7, 8, 9 innings pitched on a consistent basis, whereas you're looking at the guys like a Chris Sale that can hum it in there 97 to 100 miles an hour, but he hasn't looked great at all this year. And that's definitely a great point that it needs to be acknowledged. Now, people like Max Scherzer will say, hang on a second, I can do both. And there's only a few of those guys that can say that. Scherzer definitely in a league of his own. So very intriguing. I totally agree with you that pitchers that throw a lot of strikeouts don't necessarily have the endurance or the ability to go deep into games.
We've got Scott Hastings joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting, and one of those guys that does a terrific job of being able to get strikeouts is Garrett Cole, but we've seen him get a little bit roughed up so far this year. I mentioned the strikeouts, 44 strikeouts in 29 and a third innings, but this year he's 1-3, 5.22 ERA, just got completely mashed against the Texas Rangers last time we saw him. As for the Cleveland Indians, they're going to be going with a starter to be determined. It was supposed to be Trevor Bauer. Looks like he's injured, as the Indians in general are just dealing with a bunch of injuries along the starting rotation. What are your thoughts on this game? Because I feel like this is a spot where we're either going to see the great Garrett Cole or we're going to see Garrett Cole give up quite a few runs, because he, along with so many other aces so far this year, have really been struggling.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Cole, his last outing, I don't know what happened. That was so much unlike the Garrett Cole we've come to know and to love in some situations. But he's just sort of been, hit and miss. He's not getting hit around that many as far as overall hits, but it just seems the hits that he is allowing are hard hit balls. In Cleveland, the injuries just keep coming, but they're just one of those tricky teams that have the ability to put up 8 or 9 runs, or they could put up 1 or 2. And I find Houston is the same way. They're hitting the ball very well, among the top teams in the majors in batting average. But then sometimes you just see them get shut out or manufacture only 2 or 3 runs. So both teams have been very difficult to cap, because on paper, they're the class of both of their divisions. But pitching has sort of let both teams down, hit and miss. And again, it's so difficult, even for a totals guy. I like to lean towards totals when teams are quite streaky to begin the season. But even with these two, on paper, the under would be a good play. But these bats can either get super hot, light it up, or they could go silent cold and we get a 1-0 game. And again, that goes back to Garrett Cole. What are we going to get out of him? Are we going to get a 7-8 inning outing where he mows down 10 batters and allows 2 or 3 hits? Or are we going to get the Cole that we just saw where he gets absolutely torched? Very difficult game. That's the one on the schedule that I just have, it might be a stay away from me.
Absolutely. And what we're noticing in general, I referenced it a little bit earlier, so many of these aces so far this year have been really, really profitable if you've been fading them. Chris Sale just has not gotten things going. I don't think the Red Sox have won a single one of his starts so far this year. Garrett Cole, 1-3 record. Max Scherzer just got completely lit up like a Christmas tree against the Miami Marlins a couple days ago. Heck, Jacob deGrom was now on the injured list. He had 2 really rough outings as well. Is it just me, or is one of the most profitable plays in baseball this year just been taking these massive underdogs against these great aces and just taking your chances with it, because more often than not, these plus prices have been cashing?
Yeah, I completely agree. And that actually ties right into a game also on this slate, the Marlins and Phillies, and Aaron Nola. He's another one that I don't know what's going on with him. He's allowed 7 home runs in 19 innings in April, sporting a 6.85 ERA. And the Phillies are just 2-3 in his starts. And you know that he's going to be a minus 180 to minus 200 favorite against the Marlins. And I think that's a spot where, as you mentioned, he's a big ace. He's going to get the great odds. It might be worth just sprinkling the other side of things and just see what's going to happen.
And you take a look at the other side, Craig Smith hasn't been too bad for the Miami Marlins either, even though those bats, well, they're a different story. As Scott Hastings is joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And I mentioned that, and it just seems like some of these teams, there are some that just put up runs like crazy, and then there are others that are completely struggling with the bats. For instance, the San Francisco Giants have the best bullpen ERA in the bigs. They also have one of the worst offenses out there in the major leagues. The Pittsburgh Pirates, badly banged up, have one of the best pitching staffs out there in the majors. And then you've got teams like the Mets, who are putting up a bunch of runs, but their bullpen has been letting them down so bad. Has it been really interesting to you that some of these teams are just sort of correlating great offense with terrible pitching and vice versa? Because I'm noticing that there aren't too many well-balanced teams. You either have one or the other, which leads to a great amount of overs with some teams and just a high amount of unders with others.
Definitely. It's sort of interesting. I look at a team like the Toronto Blue Jays, who might be one of those sneaky teams recently where their pitching staff has been tremendous. Of course, Matt Shoemaker had that terrible season-ending ACL injury, but their bats are starting to come alive. They've been a great underdog play over the last week or so. You sort of got to keep an eye on these teams that their pitching has been performing well and just trying to see when their bats sort of heat up and try and catch that for a 4 or 5 day, maybe it's a series, maybe it's a couple series that they get hot, and you can pounce on those underdogs. Going back to the Marlins, I think they got a great spot this weekend just where their bats aren't great, but I think their pitching staff lines up well against the Phillies, who's, again, their bats go silent very quickly. We've seen it before, and their pitching has been a little rough. So I think if the Marlins bats can come alive in this series, there's money to be made there. But yeah, finding that well-balanced team like Boston was last year, they had tremendous pitching as well as just a ridiculous lineup. Houston for the past couple of years, same idea. We're not getting that this year. We have offense or pitching, and you pick your choice.
Absolutely. And two of those teams that have great offense and, well, not a lot of pitching, the Texas Rangers and the Seattle Mariners. I think that this game is going to be really interesting on Thursday, as Marco Gonzalez has actually been a very good pitcher for the Seattle Mariners. We're seeing the Seattle Mariners, and rightfully so, as a big favorite in this one. Is it just me, or is this one with a total hovering right around 8.5 or 9 that you need to take a look at over? Because the Texas Rangers, as we know in this series against the Oakland A's, have really had to dive deep in their bullpen. And with the Seattle Mariners, I think in all but 2 games so far this year, they've generated at least 1 home run.
Yeah, the M's bats have been fantastic to start the year. I think the Mariners are really going to pounce. So a line less than 9.5, I think the over has to be the play here. Gonzalez has been good, but he has some chinks in the armor. He hasn't shut anyone down completely. Kansas City got a couple runs on him. Oakland at the start of the season, who didn't have much of an offense, got 3. Boston hit him around for 9 hits and 3 earned runs. So I think there are some vulnerabilities in Gonzalez's game, and he's going to allow a couple runs to do their part. And I think the Mariners are just going to absolutely trounce the Rangers in this game. So, yeah, I think the over is a smart
Scott,
call.
I don't know if you've been betting this trend, but I have been myself, and it has been very profitable this year. Just fading the Boston Red Sox at all costs. They're going to be back in action on Thursday. Jordan Zimmermann on the bump for the Tigers. Rick Porcello for the Boston Red Sox, and we all know that Rick has an ERA above 8. Right now, what I'm seeing is the Detroit Tigers as a right around plus 170 to 175 underdog on the early offshore lines. Is there any reason to be betting the Boston Red Sox right now? Because right now what I'm seeing is a badly overvalued team that's not getting a lot on offense, and their pitching, let's face it has not been good.
The pitching has been horrendous in Boston. I don't know what is going on there. They have a staff that you got Rick Porcello, a former Cy Young winner, Chris Sale, always in the mix, David Price, always in the mix, and they are just completely underperforming. And they're still getting, like, as you mentioned, the minus 180, minus 200, even further, and they're not living up to it. They're perfect fade territory. Of course, Detroit there earlier this week got on Chris Sale. They took that doubleheader. Rick Porcello, there's not much to say positively about him. averaging almost 7 walks per 9 innings. And I know the Tigers have had their issues manufacturing runs this year, but if you're just going to load the bases on a couple free passes, they're going to take advantage of you over and over again. And the way the bats have been going for Boston, as I mentioned, it's going to be hard for them to keep up with Detroit.
In that same division, the New York Yankees actually enter into this game above 500 with the LA Angels. I am not sure how they continue to lose guys left and right, but they continue to be able to find a way. They've got 6 of their 9 starters from opening day on the injured list. Now you've got Clint Frazier, who's day-to-day. They're still without Luis Severino. I think the ball boy took an injury as well. And yet they're still just finding a way to get wins, and they've got Masahiro Tanaka going on the mound. Is this perhaps a spot where we buy low with the New York Yankees and just continue to trust them to be able to find ways to win? Because it feels like the Sharps keep on gobbling up the opponents of the New York Yankees, and the Yankees just keep on winning these games.
It doesn't make sense. It defies all logic. They're scoring runs, and they continue to do so, even though I'm not even entirely sure who's stopping the ball at first base. Whether it's a pylon with a glove on it, I'm not entirely sure. But they keep winning, and it's maybe a credit to the depth and the farm system that the Yankees have put in place. Aaron Boone, tremendous manager. I think he has a real grasp on his squad. It's just hard to argue. Their pitching has been fairly good. They're manufacturing runs, and I love the Yankees in this game. Trevor Cahill having tremendous issues, allowing 4 or more runs in 3 of his 5 starts, and giving up an average of just under 3 home runs per 9 innings. And although it might be a collage of 9 batters, they'll be able to get on Trevor Cahill. And I think there's opportunity there. And Tanaka has been very good as well, allowing 1 run in 4 of his 5 starts. But oddly enough, the Chicago White Sox roughed him up for 5 on 7 hits. So I credit back to Aaron Boone is he's kept a short leash on Tanaka. He's only topped 90 pitches just once this year, and that came in his last start. So he may be just stretching Tanaka out as he knows it's a long season. And we've seen some of these Japanese pitchers that have come over and they're thrown to the Wolves. They throw 100-plus pitchers, and next thing you know, they have an elbow injury. So I like this approach that Aaron Boone is using early on in the season. Apparently, it's been quite effective right now for Tanaka. So I love the Yankees, and if the Sharps are going to pound the Angels, have at it. I'll wait for the value to increase for the Yanks, and I'll hammer them.
Absolutely. I've been right there as well. Scott Hastings joined me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. And Scott, is there anything else you've been noticing so far early on in the baseball season that has been really profitable for you? I've been mentioning fading the Red Sox, fading these aces and everything like that. Has there been a player or two that you've really just loved and it's been cashing for you?
Well, one of the disappointing ones has been the Homer Bailey day. He's tricking us.
He came back a couple days ago at least.
Yes, he showed his true colors there not too long ago, but that's one that's always, you got to keep an eye on that because he has had a couple good outings, but I'm sure as the season progresses, he will go back to his old form. So I look forward to that. I mentioned earlier the Blue Jays, and I think they're definitely a team to keep an eye on because they're going to have these moments where all their bats sort of catch fire. And we've seen this throughout the last several years with this lineup is there's sort of all or nothing. And we've seen that already in the early goings for their season, but their pitching staff has been absolutely terrific. And that's allowing them to stay in these games. And they're typically underdogs in most games, especially in that division. So that's a team that I'm really going to keep an eye on. And as I mentioned earlier as well, fading Aaron Nola and these big name pitchers, they're just not performing well. And the young pitchers I find have been really making a name for themselves. I look at Max Fry there for Atlanta, and he's been absolutely terrific. He's getting a ton of run support. He's got a 3-1 record. So just some of these young guns that don't maybe have the name value behind them yet are earning some good money.
I am right there with you, and I would like to close it up with this, Scott. I know you're doing tremendous work for OddsShark. You do a variety of different things for them. Let the good people at home know what you're working on and where they can find you on social media and elsewhere.
Yeah, so you can find me on oddshark.com. That's where I put all my articles, and I cover primarily now baseball, now that college hoop season in the rearview mirror, and all your combat sports such as boxing and UFC. And you can find me on Twitter at ScottyH_OS.
Terrific. A big thanks to Scott Hastings for joining me right here on MLB Overtime Betting. Always good to have him on. Gonna need to have him on a lot more throughout the season. And coming up next, it is that time that I give you a side and total on a little bit of a shorter MLB card today as we touch them all.
Hey, I'm Steve Heitner, the guy who uttered the famous phrase, "That's gold." And that's the inspiration of my new podcast, That's Gold with Steve Heitner. We talk sports, sports betting, movies, comedy, food, drink, Vegas, music, movies, and more. 5 days a week. Did I say movies twice? Look, guys love it, whether they're hip or worried about breaking a hip. Find us on Apple and Google Podcasts, as well as Spotify and Stitcher. That's Gold with me, Steve Heitner.
Welcome back to MLB Overtime. Greg is throwing a gem, so yeah, he better not blow it.
A big thanks to Scott Hastings of OddsShark for joining me in the last segment as we are back here in the Azuñia de Gil studios for MLB Overtime Betting. And now it is that time of the podcast in which I give you a side and total on every game on the Las Vegas betting board as we touch them all.
If a game is listed on the betting board, Greg has a side and a total on it, so it is time to touch them all.
Note that any changes that are made to these plays are going to be noted on my Twitter page at @GUnit_81. Of the 8 games on the Las Vegas betting board, by the way, 3 of them are off the board. The Texas Rangers wound up having to change their starter, and there was some uncertainty as to whether Trevor Bauer of the Cleveland Indians and John Lester of the Chicago Cubs were going to be starting their games. But fortunately, we are going to have a starter in our first game, and I do want to note that some of these plays are locked in, and some of these I'm in wait-and-see mode. We go in rotation order at 9:01, 9:02. The Arizona Diamondbacks are still in Pittsburgh to face off against the Pirates. Jameson Taillon takes a bump for the Pirates. Meanwhile, Zach Greinke goes for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Total on this game is 7, and it is shaded over. Over is anywhere between -115 and -120. If you like the Arizona Diamondbacks, you're going to get anywhere between +105 and +115. Meanwhile, if you want to lay it with the Pittsburgh Pirates, anywhere between -115 and -125. Jameson Taillon has been a pretty good starter so far this year, but what we are noticing is that the Arizona Diamondbacks are really starting to hit the cover off the ball. They had a little bit of a rough go of it on Tuesday as they only had 2 runs in that game, but on Wednesday they had a good output. On Monday they completely exploded for a bunch of late game runs. This is a spot where I actually do have to take a look at the over, and I've already locked it in at 7, because something that we know about Zach Greinke is that though he still has very good command and though he still does a very good job of being able to locate his pitches, he doesn't quite have the velocity that he once did. And Jameson Taillon is a good starter. I certainly think that he's going to be able to give some strong innings for the Pittsburgh Pirates, but he's not necessarily a guy that's going to be able to shut down this great lineup. Taillon for the year, 1-2, 3.12 ERA. He has given up 23 hits in 26 innings. Something that you have to note about Zach Greinke as well is that he will give up the long ball. He is 3-1 this year, but his ERA is 4.60 because he's given up 8 home runs so far this season. So obviously want to note that. But with the Pittsburgh Pirates, we know how badly they're banged up. Now Brian Reynolds, their left fielder, is day-to-day with an injury. Starling Marte, Corey Dickerson, all injured. Eric Gonzalez is going to be out for a very long time. Kevin Newman is still injured. They do get Gregory Polanco back, but right now you're looking at Gregory Polanco, Melky Cabrera, and Josh Bell being the main 3 hitters for this team. Bell hitting 4 home runs and 16 RBI going into Wednesday's action, and Melky Cabrera hitting just below 300. But you gotta love what Christian Walker is doing for the Arizona Diamondbacks, hitting 329, 7 home runs, 13 RBI going into the team's game on Wednesday. And then on Wednesday, the Arizona Diamondbacks were really able to hit Jordan Lyles and hit him hard. Nick Ahmad wound up going deep for his 2nd home run of the year. That's very good at the bottom of the lineup. Wilmer Flores has not really picked it up with the bat, and Ketel Marte has been a little bit cold, but we're noticing that Eduardo Escobar is really getting hot. David Peralta still hitting above 300, and now they've got Blake Swihart, who they acquired because Boston essentially gave up on him as well. So the Arizona Diamondbacks certainly have a bunch of guys they're able to hit. And for the Pittsburgh Pirates, Adam Frazier has been doing a decent job of getting on base at the top of the lineup, but Cole Tucker, aside from that home run that he hit on Saturday, isn't doing much. Jung Ho Kang, Francisco Cervelli, pair of guys are hitting below $1.75. 7 with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Their bullpen is okay, but it's not great. Same goes for the Arizona Diamondbacks, so I do think that we're going to get some runs, and I have a little bit more faith in Zach Greinke in this spot along with that lineup. So for that reason, I'm going to be taking the Arizona Diamondbacks at a plus price, currently in wait-and-see mode there, but I've already locked in the over on this game. Game 903, 904 on the betting rotation. It is one of those games that is currently off the board, as it is the LA Dodgers still in Chicago to face off against the Cubs. For the Cubs, John Lester is going to be coming off the injured list. Meanwhile, for the LA Dodgers, it is Ross Stripling. As we know, the total on this game is going to be dependent on the wind in this one. We have noticed that John Lester has been getting hit around a little bit more in recent years. His fielding independent last year just did not match up with his ERA, and he had a little bit of a rough go of it in the second half of the year, but the Cubs in general have really been picking it up with the bats going into Wednesday. Javi Baez had really been doing a great job hitting .315, 7 home run, 18 RBI. Anthony Rizzo seems to be busting out of his funk. Kyle Schwarber hitting right around 200. Things aren't going well for him, but Daniel Descalso and Jason Hayward have really been doing a great job with the bat, along with Wilson Contreras, who's hitting above 300. And then for the LA Dodgers, it's all about Cody Bellinger. He's hitting above 400, going into Wednesday, 11 home runs, 26 RBI. And then this Dodgers team, though they were held a little bit silent in the first couple games of the series with the Chicago Cubs, still have a bunch of guys they're able to hit. You've got Kike Hernandez, Justin Turner at the top of the lineup. David Freese has been slumping, but how about how good of a find they have gotten with Alex Verdugo so far this year? Sort of a platoon outfielder that is hitting above 333, 3 home runs, and it's been much needed with A.J. Pollock struggling a little bit so far this season. And then you've got Taylor, who's hitting below 200 as well. That's not necessarily a redeeming quality, but Austin Barnes also needs to pick it up with the bat as the catcher spot. Been a little bit of a woe with the LA Dodgers. They had a bunch of home runs early, but if the wind is blowing in, that could be something that leads me to the Chicago Cubs, just because you've got more guys that are able to hit for solid contact, I feel like, especially with Ben Zobrist at the top of the lineup. This is going to be a little bit of a wait-and-see play. I'm right now leaning a little bit towards the Cubs, but I want to try to get at the very least a decent price on them. If they'd be laying like 130 or something like that, I probably wouldn't be able to take John Lester in this spot. But with that said, right now leaning Cubs and right now leaning over, but check back in the morning on my Twitter page at @unit_81 for official plays. 905, 906 on the betting rotation. It is the Atlanta Braves in Cincinnati to face off against the Reds. Luis Castillo goes for the Cincinnati Reds. Julio Teheran for the Atlanta Braves. Total in this game is 9, and it is shaded both ways. The over is -110, the under is -110. And if you want to take a shot on the Braves, you're going to be getting anywhere between +125 and +130. Want to lay it with the Reds, anywhere between -135 and -140. Very hard to trust in our very good friend Julio, who had a very rough start over the weekend against the Cleveland Indians. All in all, for the year, this is a guy that is not doing much, and that is putting it politely. ERA of a 4.61, whip of a 1.64. He has 14 walks in 25 2/3 innings. Meanwhile, Luis Castillo, lights out so far this year. 30 2/3 innings, 41 strikeouts. Now, he does have 14 walks in that time period, but he's only given up 1 home run. We all know that the Atlanta Braves have some decent bats, but they've been a little bit hit or miss recently. Ronald Acuna Jr. doing a great job for this team heading into Wednesday. He had 6 home runs, 16 RBI, hitting right around 300. Nick Markakis hitting above 300 as well. He's been doing a great job. You got to like what Tyler Flowers is able to bring to that catcher spot along with Brian McCann. They form a nice 1-2 combo whenever they're back there. Josh Donaldson was able to get things online in that series against the Cleveland Indians, but he's been a little bit hit or miss. Freddie Freeman still hitting above 300, and Dansby Swanson been doing a great job of driving in runs. And for the Cincinnati Reds, let's face it, the bats have been cold. Going into their game on Wednesday, they had nobody in the starting lineup that was hitting above 250, aside from their center fielder, and this is because of a very small sample size in Phillip Ervin, and he wound up dipping his average as well. Jesse Winkler does a nice job of being able to hit for power, 6 home runs and 10 RBI, but going into Wednesday, he was hitting below 200. He was actually able to up that, which is nice. Dan Diedrich has hit some home runs. We all know that Joey Votto and Yasiel Puig and company are able to put some good contact on the ball, but Matt Kemp is right now on the 10-day injured list. That's a little bit of a woe for this team, but I do feel like they have the much better starter in this spot in Luis Castillo, Julio Teheran is probably going to walk quite a few guys, which will give Cincinnati a chance to be able to put some runs up on the board. I do think that this is a total that stays under because I really do like the way that Castillo is pitching, and I do think that the light-hitting Cincinnati Reds give a little bit of something to that. Currently in Wayne C mode on that under, but I actually like the Reds so much that I'm going to be taking them on the run line. I am very high on Luis Castillo. I was able to get a run line price of plus 150, seeing a lot of plus 145 out there as well. I advise to play on either, but I locked in 150 personally. So for that reason, on the run line of the Cincinnati Reds, I'm going to be playing this total under. 907, 908 on the betting rotation. We've got the Miami Marlins in Philadelphia to face off against the Phillies. Aaron Supernola goes for the Philadelphia Phillies. Caleb Smith on the bump for the Miami Marlins. Total in this game is 7 and it is shaded under. Under is anywhere between minus 110 and minus 115. Meanwhile, the over anywhere between minus 110 and minus 105. If you want to take the fish, you're going to be getting a massive plus price. Anywhere between plus 170 and plus 175. Want to lay here with Phillies. Anywhere between minus 180 and minus 195. With the way that Aaron Nola has been pitching so far this year, this is a no for me on the Philadelphia Phillies. I can't take them on the run line. I can't take them on the money line. I know that the fish enter into this game 7-17, but I'm going to take a shot with them. And Smith has been very good so far this year. 2-0, 2.35 ERA, whip of a .87. In 4 starts, he's issued 6 walks and has only given up 2 home runs. He's been very good and 29 strikeouts in 23 innings. Absolutely sensational. Meanwhile, Aaron Nola, the 2-0 record is deceiving as he has a whip of 1.68 and 6.84 is his ERA. He has issued 12 walks in 25 innings and has allowed 7 home runs in those starts as well. And with the Philadelphia Phillies, they've been a little bit light hitting recently. Now, going up against Jason Vargas obviously helped them score a little bit more than they did on Tuesday, which was a big giant goose egg. But with the Philadelphia Phillies, we're noticing that some of these guys are coming back down to earth. They've been going with a mismatch of players at the shortstop spot. Miguel Franco has been a very good player at the middle of the lineup, but Rhys Hoskins, Bryce Harper, Andrew McCutchen, these are all guys that are coming back to earth. They're not really getting the long ball going right now, which has been a specialty of so many of these guys because they've got a very good power hitting lineup with all these guys, especially Rhys Hoskins out there in the 4th spot as well. But with them not being able to take the ball yard, it's really limiting them. Meanwhile, for the Miami Marlins, Jose Alfaro has been a good player for this team. He's hitting .267, 4 home runs, 7 RBI. That despite the fact that he missed some time on the injured list. Miguel Rojas has picked it up with the bat. He is hitting .279 for this team. Martin Prado does a good job of being able to get on base. Now you do have some very sleepy bats out there with the Miami Marlins. We all know that Curtis Granderson is not hitting worth a lick. He's hitting $1.64. Galloway out there at center field is barely hitting above 200. He's really taking the spot of Lewis Brinson recently. Neil Walker, Brett Anderson in the middle of the lineup not doing much. And Sterling Castro is okay, but he's hitting only right around 250 and hasn't been able to generate much power either. But I do think that with the way that we have seen Aaron Nola struggle, the fish are going to be able to get to them. I'm going to be taking a massive plus price here with the Miami Marlins, just currently in wait and see mode, because I think that there might be a little bit of steam coming in on the Phillies, and I might be able to get closer to $2 on this price. But I have already locked in this over. I do think that the Marlins, who have been very inconsistent with the bats, are going to be able to get to Aaron Nola, and I think that guys like Alfaro, Prado, and company are going to be able to get on base, and they're going to be able to draw some walks as well. So for that reason, on the fish and on this total over. 909, 910 on the betting rotation. You got the Detroit Tigers on the road to face off against the Boston Red Sox. Rick Porcello on the bump for the Boston Red Sox. Jordan Zimmerman goes for the Tigers. Total in this game is 9.5, with it shaded both ways. Under is minus 110, over is minus 110. If you like the Tigers, you're going to be getting anywhere between plus 167 and plus 170. Meanwhile, if you want to lay it with the Red Sox, anywhere between minus 185 and minus 190. We talked about it with Scott Hastings in the last segment. I just cannot back the Boston Red Sox at these prices. And you know what? Jordan Zimmerman has been a pretty decent starting pitcher, and Rick Porcello, well, he has not been. We all know that the Detroit Tigers are a pretty light-hitting team, to say the least. Going into Wednesday's action, they had a combined 72 runs in 22 games so far this year, but their team batting average heading into that game was .230. Boston Red Sox team average, .231. The big difference is that the Boston Red Sox have 27 home runs to the Tigers' 13, but all in all with the Tigers, you got a couple guys that are doing a decent job of being able to get on base. Miguel Cabrera, Nico Goodrum have been able to hit for a decent average. Gordon Beckham is right around 250. Now, Josh Harrison is absolutely awful. He's only hitting right around $150, though he was able to come up with some big hits in that doubleheader on Tuesday as well. Perhaps that's sending him in the right direction, but with the Detroit Tigers, they have been able to find a couple diamonds in the rough to be able to help out this team. Brandon Dixon is hitting right around 500 ever since he got the call up to the big leagues. And Ronnie Rodriguez in that doubleheader went 4 of 8 with a home runs. And then with the Boston Red Sox, JD Martinez is still continuing to be the constant for this team. He's hitting above 300. He has been absolutely sensational, but they're not getting much out of the infield because Dustin Pedroia is right now on the 10-day injured list. This has led to Michael Chivas and Tae-Wei Lin winding up playing a lot of the infield spots, and neither of these guys are hitting well. The catcher spot in general is letting the team down. Jackie Bradley Jr. is hitting under 160. Andrew Benintendi has really come out, and Mookie Betts seems to be out of his slump, but Mitch Moreland, even though he's been providing power, only hitting right around 250-ish. He has 7 home runs and 14 RBI, which is nice, but all in all, this is a spot where you do have to take a look at the Detroit Tigers because of the pitching matchup that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Jordan Zimmerman's 0-3, but his ERA is a 4.94. He has a 1.21 whip. His issue has been long balls. In 27.1 innings, has given up 5 home runs, but only 8 walks and 25 hits in that time. Not too bad. And for Rick Porcello, he's just given up everything. In 4 starts, he's went a total of 17 innings, 28 hits, and 13 walks. That's a whip of a 2.41, kids. ERA 8.47. And the Boston Red Sox bullpen, not very good. Detroit Tigers bullpen, actually quite decent. So for that reason, I'm going to be taking the plus price here with the Detroit Tigers. Currently waiting C mode to see what plus price I'm getting. And with both these teams, not necessarily killing it with the bats, going to be on this total under, and I've already locked in this total at under 9.5. 9-11, 9-12 on the betting rotation. We've got Trevor Bauer going on the bump for the Cleveland Indians as they hit the road to face off against the Houston Astros, who send out their Garrett Cole. It was a little bit unknown as to whether or not Trevor Bauer was going to be pitching in this spot, but I am seeing one early offshore line of this total being 7.5, and the Cleveland Indians being a plus 150 underdog with the Houston Astros at minus 160. If this is the case, you got to give me the Cleveland Indians. The Indians have been a little bit overpriced so far this year, but Trevor Bauer has been sensational. He is 2-1, 2.20 ERA, whip of a .98. We all know that Garrett Cole has certainly had his issues so far this year. He enters into this game with 5.22 ERA, whip of a 1.19, and surprisingly, the Cleveland Indians bullpen, though, they've had some implosions in the past week or so, especially in that doubleheader against the Atlanta Braves. They've been pretty good so far this year. And the Houston Astros, their bullpen has been decent, but they had a couple letdowns against the Minnesota Twins. They've had some hiccups just here and there throughout the year. And with Trevor Bauer, in his 32.2 innings, he's only issued 13 walks, 42 strikeouts in that time period, and has only allowed 2 home runs. Garrett Cole's been terrific at striking out guys, 44 strikeouts in 29 and a third innings, but his whip is a 1.19. He's actually not given out too many walks, but he's given out 4 long balls so far this year. I certainly do not think that the Cleveland Indians are going to be going deep too much, as heading into this game, they are batting as a team .213 with 17 home runs. It just really hasn't gone well for them, but as we know, the Cleveland Indians were very banged up to begin the year, and now they're getting a lot of their pieces back. Francisco Lindor is back at the top of the lineup. Carlos Gonzalez is now healthy, along with Jason Kipnis. We saw them be able to put a 6th spot up on the Miami Marlins, and it seems like Jose Ramirez might finally be busting out of his slump. He had 3 hits in 4 at-bats yesterday with 4 RBI, including his 2nd home run of the year. Obviously a good sign. Carlos Santana in the middle of the lineup is hitting .338. Jason Kipnis has been hitting above .300 ever since he got back in the lineup. Now Kevin Plawecki, Jake Bowers, and Mike Freeman at the bottom of the lineup, all hitting .220 or worse. That's obviously not a redeeming quality, but they do have some bats that are in the lineup and are starting to produce. And then for the Houston Astros, we all know that up and down the lineup, they do have quite a bit of power. Heading into their game with the Minnesota Twins on Wednesday, Jose Altuve had 9 home run, 20 RBI, hitting just below 300. And they've got a bunch of guys that they're not necessarily hitting for a just absolutely remarkable amount of average, but they've just got a bunch of guys that are hovering right around like the 280s, the low 300s. Guys like George Springer, Alex Bregman, Michael Brantley, Josh Reddick has actually been hitting above 350 so far this year. They just got a bunch of those guys. Even Jake Marisnick, you could throw into the fold. And with Justin Verlander being able to give another quality start, it does leave the bullpen a little bit fresh. If I had to play a total here, I'd probably look at the under. I think that Garrett Cole gets back online, but if you're giving me plus 150 with the Cleveland Indians, that's certainly where I would have to look on this one. Obviously, that's just one offshore number, and it's only at one book as well, so we could certainly see a little bit of a different line when it comes to the morning, but those are my early leans on Indians versus Houston Astros. 9-13, 9-14 on the betting rotation. It is the Yankees on the road facing off against the LA Angels. Trevor Cahill on the bump for the Angels. Masahiro Tanaka goes for the Yankees. Total in this game is 8, and it is shaded under. The under is minus 115. The over is minus 105. If you like the Yankees, you're going to be laying anywhere between minus 118 and minus 121. Meanwhile, if you want to take a shot on the Angels, anywhere between plus 108 and plus 111. Trevor Cahill has been getting a bit roughed up in his starts with the Angels. He was actually quite decent last year with the Oakland A's, but that just has not translated to this year. And we heard from Scott Hastings how good Masahiro Tanaka has been so far this year. He hasn't really had to go deep into starts. He's given up 3 home runs so far this year, not necessarily great, but he's only had 8 walks of 28 strikeouts in his 29 and a third innings, ERA of a 2.76. He's been able to do a very good job of being able to strand men on base as well because his whip is a 1.23, and meanwhile Trevor Cahill actually has a better whip at a 1.18, but his ERA is a 5.47 because he's given up 8 home runs so far this year. You got to think that that might come back down to earth a little bit more, but with the LA Angels, they had to start Cam Pedrosian and Felix Pena because Pedrosian was essentially a starter for him, and Pena not going deep into starts, and we've noticed that the Angels have had to use their bullpen left, right, and sideways in this series against the Yankees, so they're pretty tuckered out. And for the LA Angels, they're not getting a whole lot of offense outside of Mike Trout. We all know what he's able to do. He's hitting above 300. Going into the action on Wednesday, he had 6 home runs. And Brandon Goodwin's been able to give this team a little bit of production as well. You got to like the way that he's been coming around with that. He's been able to provide some home runs, and he's hitting above 350. But you take a look at some of the other guys. Zach Cozart, who's now on the injured list, if I remember correctly, was only hitting a .09. And Drelton Simmons hitting 250-ish. Albert Pujols barely above the Mendoza line himself. Kevin Smith at the catcher spot isn't doing anything special, though I will say Jonathan Lucroy, when he's been in there, pretty decent. Daniel Fletcher hits for right around a 300 average, but he doesn't get on in regards to walks or anything like that. Justin Bour hitting just above the Mendoza line. Cole Calhoun hitting below 200. So that really lends myself to looking at the New York Yankees in this spot. I do like the way that the Yankees have been playing, and I actually already locked in the Yankees on the money line in this one. I do feel like it could be a little bit of a tighter one. I do think both these teams are going to be able to get some runs. I think that Tanaka is going to be able to provide a good start, but I think he'll give up somewhere in the neighborhood of 2 runs and maybe 6 or 7 innings. And then from there, the Yankees bullpen probably gives up a run, and they're going to be able to get something like a 5-4 win. For that reason, I am taking a look at the over in this spot, even though the Yankees, as we all know, do have their just absolute plethora of injuries. Clint Frazier is now day-to-day. They're missing 6 of their 9 starters on the injured list from opening day, but what we also know is that Luke Voigt has been hitting for some power. He's had some home runs in this series against the LA Angels. You've got Gio Urshela, who's actually stepping up with his average. DJ LeMahieu hitting right around 270-ish. Brett Gardner really picking it up with the bat on Tuesday. He had 4 hits. He was really the difference maker. And you still got Gleyber Torres and Austin Romine in the lineup as well. So looking at this total under, just with Trevor Cahill's struggles so far this year, and I've already locked in the Yankees. And we close up shot with 9-15, 9-16 on the betting rotation. This game was on the board earlier, but Adrian Sampson, the projected starter for the Texas Rangers earlier in the day, was scratched because he wound up pitching 3 innings against the Oakland A's on Wednesday. Yeah, that'll result in you not being able to make a start as the Rangers are on the road to face off against the Mariners. Now, in place of Sampson is going to be something by the name of Taylor Hearn taking the mound for the Texas Rangers. Marco Gonzalez goes for the Seattle Mariners. At the time, the total was between 8.5 and 9. If you liked the 8, it was shaded over. At 9, you were getting even juice, and the Rangers were about a plus 155 underdog, and if you liked the Mariners, you had to lay about 165. And I was looking at the Rangers with Sampson. He had actually provided a very good start and was able to cash a big plus money ticket when he went up against Garrett Cole last week. With Taylor Hearn in the lineup, throw all that out the window. I am taking the Mariners run line, and I am just taking this thing over. Because with Taylor Hearn, I was taking a look at him in the minor leagues. He was with the AAA Nashville Sounds. He's 1-3 so far this year. He has a lifetime minor league record of, I believe it's 12-23. It might be 13-24, but he doesn't have too many redeeming qualities. He does a good job of being able to strike guys out. He's able to register over 10 strikeouts per 9 innings. He's been doing a good job in that regard. But in 20 minor league innings so far this year, he's issued 10 free passes. He lends himself to hard contact. And with the Mariners not getting the offense going their last 2 games against the San Diego Padres, you got to think that guys like Daniel Vogelbach, Tim Beckham, Omar Narvaez, Jay Bruce, the list goes on and on. Edwin Encarnacion, all these guys are going to be able to hit them, and they're going to be able to hit them hard. And we know with the Texas Rangers having to essentially use an opener on Wednesday that their bullpen is totally taxed. And meanwhile, Marco Gonzalez for the Seattle Mariners has actually been pretty good so far this year. He's been doing a little bit of a Houdini act of getting out of some sticky situations, but all in all, you got to like what you've seen out of him the past couple years with the Seattle Mariners. He was a very good pitcher at home last year, and this year he's 4-0, 3.32 ERA. He's only issued 9 walks in 38 innings. He does lend himself to a little bit of contact, but he does a good job of being able to keep it in the yard. And I do think that the Rangers are going to be able to generate some runs. Joey Gallo sitting 284 with 8 home runs, 22 RBI. Danny Santana and Sin Chu Chu at the top of the lineup are both hitting above 300. Delino DeShields Jr. doesn't really hit for average. And then we know guys like Jeff Mathis, Patrick Wisdom, and company at the bottom of the lineup not really doing a great job of being able to get on base. But Noah Mazzara was able to get on track with 2 home runs in their game against the Oakland A's on Wednesday. You got to think that that helps out his confidence. Logan Forsythe also had a dinger in that game, as Drupal Cabrera has been doing an okay job at the middle of the lineup. He's been providing power, hasn't necessarily been doing the greatest job of being able to get on base. So I think there's going to be some runs to be had by the Texas Rangers, but I just think the Seattle Mariners are going to pound the tar out of the Texas Rangers. Hearns and company, I think, are just going to get pulverized. So right now, looking at a Seattle Mariners run line and this total over. We'll have plays in the morning once a line is posted. And that will do it for a Thursday edition of MLB Overtime Betting. A big thanks to Scott Hastings of OddsShark for joining me in the last segment. And if you like what you're hearing from this fine podcast, you can subscribe on Apple iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, and Stitcher. If you ever have a question for the podcast, feel free to tweet it in at @GUnit_81. And I will talk at you guys once again tomorrow. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Oh, Mrs. Garcia, you're a school counselor and new homeowner and grad student. You're an ander. National University supports the whole you, so you can focus on what matters most. Learn more at nu.edu.